Yeah. Check that out. Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. New intro and everything, getting professional. My name is Zach Adams. Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is Calvary 316. Our Sunday service is at 10:30. If you're local, come hang out with us one Sunday morning. If you're not local but looking for a good church that you can watch online, you can check out our live stream. Calvary316.live is the quick link to our YouTube channel. You can also watch us on Facebook.com/Calvary316. Again, the Sunday service is at 10:30. We invite you to join us. I am joined, as always, by the man that needs no introduction, Dick Dastardly, also known as Pope Creighton Vaughn. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing well. I hit the wrong button there. That was an auto instead of a cut, but it's good. It's a stressful day. How's everyone doing?
Well, I know anytime we do something new, there's a little trepidation leading into all of that, but I think it worked out well. We had the graphic, we had a countdown, and then we rolled out a brand new video.
Yeah.
Kind of a cool intro. I think it turned out great. What do you think?
I love it. Shout out to Bryce Castile for making it for us. If you guys like it, leave us a comment because it helps the channel and it will help my sanity to know that people like the things that we do.
Now, here's the thing. If you are listening, so this is a live stream show that gets doubled out, sent out on Thursdays as a podcast. So if you're listening to the Outlaw Radio Show, you only heard the music. So you weren't able to see this fancy introduction to the show. We were able to work it out one night where we had, so we kind of have a cast of characters. Creighton's a regular. He's kind of the producer of the show. I'm here every week. We got Spice Daddy, who we'll get to in a moment. Football Mom, Isaac, is here most of the time. But then we rotate in Deal Daddy Derek. We rotate in Vinny, also known as Dear Daddy. So we've got some guys. So we were able to kind of like one night, we brought in Bryce. We filmed a whole intro. We kind of moved some guys around, got everyone a little bit in it. And I mean, I thought it turned out really, really well. And I think Vinny said it well because I sent the video out to the guys. He said it kind of like it. What he liked about it is kind of encapsulated. It well represented the fun that we have in the room, and just kind of how it's like it just really represented the casual atmosphere, the general atmosphere. So if you're listening to the podcast, you do need to go to our YouTube channel, go to outlawradio.live, and check out the video. Let us know what you think. We'll be posting it on our social media, kind of throwing that out as well as a little bit of a promo, which will be cool. So we're going to use that. And then we've got like, you don't know this, Creighton, we got like 60 gigs of footage that we'll be able to.
Oh my good God.
Yeah, Bryce, he's giving us all the footage, going to put it on a flash drive so we can take stuff and make our own little videos that we want to throw out. But
awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Join in studio, as always, Spice Daddy. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. I'd like to remind everybody of what we're talking about.
Oh, good grief. So he's doing this because I gave a card. So one of the things that we've been told is like, hey, we get into the show, we maybe come in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and we have no idea what you're talking about. And so I made a card, and it's sitting on the table in front of these guys. It says, hey, remind people what we're talking about. So Spice Daddy's just being a jerk right now.
No, I'm
just following instructions.
I'm following instructions.
So what are we talking about right now?
And we're
doing
talking about the new entry video that we're doing. I hope you like my face on there. If you have any suggestions on anything you would like to see on that intro video, just email popecreighton@gmail.com.
That's true. popecreighton@gmail.com is one of the primary ways that you can get in touch with the show. In real time, if you'd like to reach out directly to me, my cell phone number is 678-438-9202. You can join the conversation with the live stream. Again, 678-438-9202. Or you can leave a comment in the thread. We're live streaming on YouTube. Again, outlawradio.live is the link to our YouTube channel, as well as facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw. Pope Creighton is monitoring both comments section. We'll try to get those in as well. Also joined in studio by Football Mom, also known as Isaac. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Just so everyone knows, if you're just joining the conversation, we're doing introductions right now.
He also has the same card in front of him.
So Creighton has already introduced himself, obviously Spice Daddy. And I don't, you know what? I'm just realizing we actually don't have a nickname for you.
I don't need a nickname.
No. We're going to come up with one.
It's not going to be used.
Really, but it will be, though.
So we try to send out on Wednesdays on our social media pages. Creighton, that's not going to happen. We're not. I'm not getting,
that's going to happen. We just got to figure out what it is.
Any suggestions for nicknames for Zach?
I'm thinking
email at popecreighton@gmail.com.
I'm thinking like Near Death Daddy or something like that.
Death Daddy.
I was thinking Hemingway for the book.
Farewell to Arms.
Yes.
So we send out a graphic on Instagram or Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever it is. And we've kind of come up with a bit of a branding, so it's kind of a pencil, black and white shot of something within the room. What I love about this week's was that I mean, football mom text on this hoodie was just front and center. Where did you get this hoodie?
Well, listen, I don't like to spend money on clothes in particular. So my wife likes to go to a thrift store, and I say okay, but every time I go there, it's more of just like a gag thing for me. And so
You found a football
I found
mom.
this here sweater, which is really just a really good sweater. Multiple people have stopped me in the street or at the store saying, "You're wearing her clothes today," and I was like, "It's a new world." You know, so it's
You did all that without asking your pronouns first?
Yeah, I did. He did. How presumptive. Okay, pretty rude. But I also got this really nice velvet jacket,
Which is where we got the Velvet Elvis. We've thrown that out for sure.
Which, if
That
you'd
way.
ever like to see that in great lighting, come see us at Calvary 316 on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, when he's
really
drumming.
shimmers.
Yeah.
Solid drumming with the
Oh, yeah.
shimmering velvet.
It's beautiful. So that one, actually, I got up to the counter, and as the guy was ringing it up, it was like ladies' jacket, and I was like, too late to go back now. You know what I mean?
Was that when you realized?
It's $2.25, man. I'm rolling with it.
This sweater was $4. Okay, I mean, you just can't.
There you
beat the
go. You
prices.
can't. You just. It is what it is.
Sure, it says football mom, but $4.
So Creighton, very quickly, why don't you explain how the show works, and then I'm kind of trumping it all.
Yeah, so the way that show normally works is that I will bring in a topic or a Bible passage or something that I would like Zach to make a Bible study out of, and for the rest of us to discuss. And we have like conversations and whatnot about it. Unfortunately, I had my weeks mixed up, and so I walked into the office today. And
You
Zach
thought we
goes,
had guests.
I thought today was the day that we had Miss Ann and Mr. Darrell as our guest for the show. So I went the whole day. I was like, I don't need to think of a topic. Like, it's going to be
It'll
an
be
easy
great. I
night.
get to see Ann and D. It'll be awesome.
be great. And I walk in, and Zach's like, hey, you got your topic, right? And I was like, no, I don't. What do you mean? And he goes, what do you mean? How do you? And I was like, we have the guests. And he's like, nope. And he goes,
That's
all
next
right,
week.
well, I will.
Why don't
April
you just,
10th.
Why don't
Yes.
you just pull from your hat the topics that we've like stolen from you and gone to something completely different?
Well, that's when I told Creighton, don't worry about it. I was already going to trump you.
Yeah, that's what he said. Don't worry about it. He's going to derail me anyway. So
we could continue our conversation from 2 weeks ago, which was pretty saucy.
That the Evo one, Evolution?
Yeah, it was that and kind of the new old Earth, kind
Yeah.
of ideas.
I'd
That's
be
up
down.
to you.
But to finish what I was saying, the show doesn't work. We just keep going with it. It's a lot of fun. Also, it's brought to you by Get Fed Today, which is a great podcast if you want to get a new Bible study once a week or once a day, 5 days a week. The guys over there put a lot of work into it, and you should check it out.
You said the show doesn't work, and it really just I'm watching The Walking Dead right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is just such a great show. I used to hate Carl when I first watched that show.
I watched
Understandable.
15 minutes and said I can't deal with this witchcraft.
Yeah, Zach doesn't do zombies.
I'm a very
well.
holy person, and I like to put my thoughts on the things of the Lord.
He's a very
and
scary
not on
cat.
carnal
person.
things like walking zombies and
Well,
the
listen.
apocalypse.
When you said this show doesn't work, it really harkened back to just that RV in the beginning of the show. It just kept breaking down, and
Yes.
yet somehow they kept fixing it. It just kept going.
All I know is their weapons of choice were terrible decisions.
I couldn't agree more.
Like, it's a whole nother topic.
That's
for
a whole
another
nother
day.
topic.
They get better, though.
So we just had. I should make a notation that if you're wanting to comment in real time, don't email us. So popecreighton@gmail.com. I've got like multiple things happening on my monitors, and I get like a quick notification. So I know someone just actually dropped like a prospective nickname via email, but by the time I could get to it, it had disappeared. And if I try to go to it, I might mess up recording things that are happening.
Get lost. You're 5 minutes down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, this could be bad. So popecreighton@gmail.com is not the way to interact in real time. It's better, again, to send me a text directly because it goes right to my phone, 678-438-9202. popecreighton@gmail.com is a better place to like drop something for a future topic, a comment that can be added in later on into a future episode.
Professions of love.
Then
Right.
that's Zach's actual phone number. So if
It's
you want to
literally my phone number, yes.
if you want to drop some encouraging notes later on in the week, you can do that too.
Thank you, Justin.
Zach really likes foot pictures. If you're-
Well, what's like I was asked, like that's dangerous for you to put your you can block anybody. So like I can, if I get a foot picture, it's not going to happen.
Depends
it's
on the
immediately going to the favorites.
You're right. No, you're gone.
Download.
So Creighton typically drops a topic. Getting back to where we're at with things, Creighton drops a topic. It's my job to turn that topic into a Bible study with the help of these gentlemen. Creighton got his weeks mixed up. No big deal. Next week, programming alert. We do have good friends of ours, Ann and D. David, are going to be sharing their testimony. And you know, I was even thinking about this, Creighton. Obviously, we want to focus on. So Ann almost died of COVID. She was in almost as bad a situation as I was in. Things were dark, and this was a couple months before me. And D, the story of faith. D's gonna be here to share because I was talking to Ann. She's like, I think it'd be great to have D share his part of the story, and I totally agree. Which is why I wanted Jessica to come on and to share her story. She just recently did share her. Did you listen to it? Did you actually listen to the audio? Because I sent it to you.
So I started listening because I edited it to send out to
Send it back to me. I
you.
got the audio. Yeah.
And I started listening to it, and then I stopped because I didn't want to cry while I was at work.
Right.
So
oh, it's heavy. No, so Jessica was invited to do a
how I start every day.
workshop. She was invited to do a workshop at the Deep South Women's Gathering. So there was like 450 ladies. She did a workshop. It was packed. She did 2 of them back to back. They were both packed. They recorded the second one. It was about 25, 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. This was the first time she had actually shared her story. And, you know, it was fascinating because she kept she was working her thoughts out, and she was just trying to find just a biblical text to kind of begin with. And we had just watched the episode of The Chosen, which I think was maybe one of the best episodes. It was season 3, where Jairus, the ruler of the synagogue, his daughter is very ill. He comes to get Jesus. They're making their way. The woman with the flow of blood, there's that story that happens in the middle of it. They get all the way through. Kenny Snipes just say, I heard you like foot pics.
does.
No, Kenny. No.
Send it, Kenny.
No, Kenny. That's
Full
not.
send.
If you hit send, they'll make it to the show.
Please
I will
do.
put your feet on the show. Anyway,
Don't worry,
so,
Kenny. We'll grab some and bring them down to Honduras for you.
y'all are ridiculous. So, but seriously, so there's this scene that, so they're in a hurry to get to Jairus' house. His daughter's dying. It's a dire situation. The crowds are mobbing Jesus. He stops when this woman touches the hem of his garment. It's just a powerful scene. Who touched me? And Peter's like, everyone's touching you. You were in a small alley. People are crowding around you. And he says, no, someone touched me. And the whole journey gets interrupted. He deals with this woman. And then they pick up the journey again. And, they kind of basically get closer to the house. They hear the wailing in the distance. One of the religious leaders comes up to Jairus and says, hey, don't bother him. Your daughter's dead. And Jesus looks and he's like, will you believe? You just got a bad diagnosis, right? You just got terrible news. And Jesus looks the man in the eye and says, I know everything you're being told defies medical logic. Will you believe? Will you believe me? And Jessica used that as her text because and we had just been watching it. It fit so well that she kind of just started in with the Lord, do you believe? Will you trust me? And so, you know, if Jessica will not be on the show, I am going to talk to her about getting permission for us to maybe do an episode where we air the audio and kind of talk about it. But we're going to have next week Ann and Dee. Dee's going to talk about kind of the survivor aspect of kind of the story. One of the other things I want to ask them about. So Ann and Dee, Ann is they've been married for what you would think 30, 35 years,
something like that.
Which is crazy because Ann's only 35 years old. I mean, it's a crazy thing.
That's
Works
illegal.
out
They
better
got
than you
married
think.
very young. But no, so Ann is as white as you get.
Oh yeah.
Dee is as black as you get.
Yes.
And so an interracial couple in the South. And I do want to ask maybe a couple questions about that, about how churches have handled that particular topic. I think it'd be fun. So next week, we're going to have a lot of fun. So I got a couple texts very quickly. Creighton, if you want to just...
Hi. That's him telling me to
Yeah.
vamp. This is me vamping.
Yeah, no, you don't have to vamp. I did get a foot pic from Kenny.
Lucky. Put that on the
did.
screen.
No, that did come in.
Let's
Although
get
it's not. It was more of boots.
Okay, Kenny, we're gonna need you to take the boots and the socks off, all right?
It was boots.
Let's get a little skin in there, Kenny.
What kind of boots?
I'd like to know what cigar he's smoking. By the way, he has a cigar.
Oh, my
so we got that, and then also Tom dropped us a note and said, "Love the new intro. You owe Penny the audio. Oh, the audio of Jessica. Yes. Send me an email and I'll send it to you." And then he says, "By the way, 12 years saved today. Thank you, Jesus." So,
Hot dang.
how about that, Tom? 12 years saved today.
That's awesome.
That's incredible, brother. That's really powerful. And you're 12 years old, so you are reaching your teenage years, which is very dangerous for all of us. So Tom is a Christian 12-year-old, and so he's going to start going through puberty. We should be careful.
into it.
What?
We can't
Lean
go from
into it.
peaks to puberty. It's a downward slope.
It's a downward spiral.
Kind of goes back into what we were talking about. Was it last week or whatever? We were talking about middle school or high school. Just lean into those awkward years.
Lean into the awkward years, Tom. They're coming. So, again, I told Creighton, hey, I was going to kind of trump the topic anyway. This is going to be kind of one of those episodes where I'm just going to be really kind of, I don't know how to say it, vulnerable a little, if I can be, a little raw. There is within church speak, within pastoral circles, there's what's called the Monday blues. Creighton, have you heard? You've been around ministry long enough. What are the Monday blues for a pastor?
I would assume it's where your whole week builds up to Sunday, and you have all of this expectation and desire about what you want to do Sunday, and then Monday it's like, oh well, Sunday's done, and you have that weird position between coming off of Sunday, and yet you haven't started getting ready for next Sunday. So
Yeah,
you haven't started up the hill again.
Yeah, most pastors actually, like traditionally speaking, I would say the majority take Monday off. Like Monday's kind of a day off where you're climbing the mountain, and then you're pouring your heart out Sunday behind the pulpit. You're ministering to folks. And then there's like this crash that happens. And so Monday it's like I'm just going to tap out, going to rest, going to relax a little bit. Then Tuesday begins the start of kind of a new work week. I don't necessarily adhere to that. I work on Mondays. I don't take a Monday off. This week was a little different just because the kids are on spring break, and so I took a few days we did a lot of yard work, pine straw, and taking advantage of the kids being home to get some things done around the house. But like I think Monday is like exacerbated a little bit following Easter. My Monday is not like I'll sleep in. I'll give myself the license to sleep in. I don't really end up with like the Monday blues. For me, it's like the Saturday bog, where it's like, I get to Saturday, which is a day off, and I'm starting to lean in later in the evening, knowing that okay, Easter's here, and feeling like, oh my goodness, my feet are in quicksand, and I'm not ready. I haven't done enough. I'm in a heap load of trouble. Tomorrow's going to be a disaster.
That's how I felt about Andy playing with him. Yeah.
Yes, no, Isaac. That's a whole nother story we get to at the end of the episode. But we're like, I'm even, just kind of, I'm driving to pick up Isaac on the way to church, thinking like, what am I doing with my life? This is, I'm not good at this. It's Easter Sunday.
That's been me for like the last 38 years.
Yeah, right. So for me, it's like a, okay, let me get even kind of more real, and I gotta be careful how I phrase this because I don't want to name anyone, pinpoint anything, but so like I'm on a text thread. So both boys play travel baseball, and Theodore's team, there's like, it's the dog's dad text thread, which I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it because it's just a lot of stuff that it just happens. Like I woke up this morning like 40 something text messages and wanted to delete the whole thing, but like leading into Saturday, I was getting these pictures posted from various dads, photos of like the big Easter services that they were already having, leading into the weekend. Like massive auditoriums with all these people and like gymnasiums filled. And like, it's not even an Easter yet. And like even Easter morning, like these, I'm like, what does this have to do with the baseball text thread? I had no idea. But the whole time I'm looking at them and like, okay, great. Praise the Lord. I'm excited. And I'm just being real. I'm just kind of bearing my own heart. But like, I look at that. It's like, okay, cool, man. That's great. Look at all those people. I'm going to go to my little church and I hope we fill the chairs. I got a buddy that pastors a mega church, and they had like a Thursday night service, Friday night service, 2 Saturday night services, and 4 Sunday services, and they were all packed. And it's like, yeah, man, that's cool for you. Yeah, cool. I was at home most of those days doing nothing.
Does your buddy at his church have like lasers and smoke machines?
They have all kinds of stuff. Yes, no.
Because maybe that's what we're missing.
It's right. It's a big production. And that's cool. I'm just being real and honest that like I look at these big crowds and like I've been pastoring since I was 21 years old. 10 years as a youth pastor. I've been at Calvary 316 for the last 11, 12 years. I won't even say that that our church is bigger than it's been before. Like we've had seasons where it might have even been a little bigger than it is now, but like we've had growth. And we've had addition, we've had subtraction, we've never experienced multiplication, and we're a little church, and I pastor a little church, and I'm not knocking that at all by any means. I'm just speaking to just the raw reality that like I'm getting these pictures of like, look at the thousands of people in our church and we're packed and like there's not one seat, and I'm like, well, yeah, we like the second pew was pretty empty on Easter. Like, what do I say? Like, it's like there was a bit of depression to that. Now, hey, our Easter service was great. We ended up with some challenges that night. Our worship leader and his wife got sick. We had to kind of call, like, the Lord blessed us. It was a great, it was a really good service. And we had a great crowd. And I'm not complaining. Y'all get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not complaining. Mm-hmm. It's that I'm just sharing, like, you pour your heart into things. And it's so easy to get trapped into. It's easy to get trapped into this. It's the. It would be even easy to say like success equates to numbers. The more numbers, the more successful. But I'm not even sure I can say that. It's even deeper than that. It's that like. The numbers, the impact correlates to God's favor.
It's like,
you know what I mean? Like this is my own therapy session. I hope this blesses somebody. Everyone would be like, that guy needs to find another job.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please do. I'm just because I'm going to get someplace. I got a text.
I've been to a few different churches, like mostly Calvary chapels, and they've been relatively small, but like How many of those mega church pastors know the majority of the names of the people?
Oh, you don't know anybody. It's impossible. You don't know anybody.
Right. How many of the name you know the majority of the names of the people in
I knew every person that was there this Sunday.
Right.
Easter Sunday.
And I think that says more to the congregation than anything. Because if I were going to a mega church, the pastor didn't know my name. If he tells me to do something, he has no guidance over my life. You, as my friend and pastor, I have given permission to have guidance over my life. So if you tell me to do something, that speaks to me because you know my name. I mean, same with God. Why do if I worship a God that was just a general God that didn't know my name, would I even listen to that God? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. No, I appreciate the exhortation. I'm speaking to, and I really do. Like this is not. I'm not complaining. Like the Lord, years ago, I had a resolve that if there's anybody there, if anybody shows up at Calvary 316 on a Sunday morning to hear me preach, that's one more person than I deserve. Like, who am I to complain? Like, if anybody shows up, great. If no one shows up, well, Jessica and I might need to have some conversations because I'm going to be like, why were you not at church? My own wife doesn't show up. But like if anybody shows up, again, who am I to say that I deserve something more than that? I take that very seriously. But to me, it's like it just runs deeper. There's a humanity end of it, and it's like, man, it's so easy to find yourself getting depressed by things that you know don't matter. Because I know these things don't matter, but then they do matter.
I think what's important is to remember why those things don't matter and why they do matter. Because I think what you're describing is it's not the size that's the core
Not
issue.
the size that's the problem.
Yeah, I walked right into that one.
Quality
But
over quantity.
It's the lack
True.
of it's the lack of progression. At least it's the lack of particularly visible progression. It's really easy to get into like I'm in the same place I was 3 years ago.
Right. Okay. Yeah. For
But-
sure.
But we're not. Calvary 316 isn't in the same place we were 3 years ago because we have new people. We've reached different people than we had then. We've sent people out into places. I think what the issue is not that it's not a size issue. It is a progression issue where you're looking and feeling like you don't have that progression, even though you're pushing forward. And I totally see how that's frustrating. I think that's how it is in a lot of things. You hit a plateau sometimes, and then you can still be working as hard as you were before, but you don't see the change in the markers that you were expecting or wanting, and that can be very discouraging.
So, like, you have to even take a step back. It's like, well, what is the expectation for a church? Do I even want Calvary 316? Like, how many people do you want to have come? Like, what is the number? Like, that's a conversation, that can be had. Like, how many's enough? Because you kind of will find yourself reverting back to the old John D. Rockefeller. He's a billionaire. He's like, well, how much more do you want? And he's like, one more. Like, if numbers equal success equals God's favor, then you're always wanting more. And like, but wait a second, we're called to be content. What is enough?
Well, I think that goes back to my question I had before is like, how many people do you know their names? Like, how many people do you know there? And I think when you get to the point where you don't know the majority of the people, then you're no longer a pastor. You're just a preacher at that point. You see what I'm saying?
No, I agree. I understand what you're saying. Absolutely. Football mom, any just introductory thoughts here? Just
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things. Firstly, I mean, the first thing that comes to my head is like Jesus only had 12 disciples.
Right. It's good.
You know what I mean? And look at how much the world has changed just based off of those 12 people. And I mean, that speaks volumes to the, not the numbers that you have, but the quality of what you're saying. I mean, I'm not comparing you to Jesus, but I'm saying like, that's a real testament to the fact that what he didn't require numbers.
Right.
There's that. And then the other thing is like, just kind of, and I'm not saying this to you as affirmation or to make you feel better, because I understand what you're doing, what you're saying, where it's coming from. But if I were to speak to somebody who was asking me, well, why do you go to Calvary 316 instead of a bigger church or whatever? My response would be that my spiritual life has grown immensely because of the familiarity that I have with the church, and the fact that the word is preached so well, and that there's so much context provided. I can't tell you how much I've learned just in the year and, a couple months that we've been going. And so I've been to the big churches. You come and you go. You are reduced to a number there. And that's all you are, because at the end of the day, they don't know who you are. You don't know who they are. You are literally just a number. So the pictures are just pictures. They don't even, in my mind, they don't even matter. It's like you're going to a concert, And so those are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those. Creighton, you look like you were kind of jumping to say something here.
No, I was just agreeing with Isaac. I haven't spent a lot of time at the big churches because I grew up at Calvary.
Because you've been at Calvary 316 for
Calvary
10
Stone
years.
Mountain and Calvary
Not a big
316
church.
after that.
Yeah.
But I also, the times that I have been in the big churches, it definitely feels like you can get lost in a crowd. You might as well go to Gwinnett Arena or watch something on YouTube, which if you do is fine, I guess. But church is my second place or my third place, or whatever that saying is. It's one of the only places I go to socialize. And so that's very important to me. I like being able to walk in and know who is around me. I like the fact that Aaron and Ashton come to church and they'll hand their babies to, the Parkin girls. And those babies will go through 4 or 5 different people before Aaron and Ashton see them again. And no one's worried because we all know each other and we're all family.
They're
And
literally
that's
worship
wonderful.
leaders.
I've
by the way, for
literally been,
context.
the last big church I went to, they slapped a name tag on Liam, and he had a bright pink cast on, and we went to pick him up after the service. They lost him. They literally lost him, and we were like literally freaking out. Like where is our child?
Yeah, I was
And
even
so-
handed Aaron and Ashton's kids.
Yeah, that's a leap of faith right there, okay? But, those are the kind of experiences you get at a big church. It's like they don't care about you. They don't care about your kids. I'm not saying that they're not good people. It's just like there's no,
They don't have the
interpersonal
capacity to care.
Yeah, it's like, it's, yeah.
Well, I'm not going to
exactly.
go so far as to say they don't care.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is, like Creighton said, they don't have the capacity to care. It's like Alexis is a homeschool teacher. She's teaching 2 kids. If you're teaching 30 kids, the quality of education is going to be much less, because you just have to you're working with the lowest common denominator.
Yeah. There's a quantity and quality algorithm that fits into that. Let me speak a little bit to. So I kind of was dealing with this a little bit this weekend. Just driving by the marquees. We've got 30 services this weekend. Come pick one of them, because we can't have 2 services because so many people want to come to our church, and it's like, well, we don't have that problem. That's great. And just dealing with just the natural kind of. I won't say I've never wanted that, because I have in the past wanted that. I have recognized I don't need that, and probably don't need it, because it would probably destroy me, because of my personality, and it probably just wouldn't be healthy. I'd be one of those guys that got it all and just it ruined him. So I trust the Lord that he knows what he's doing when he's doing it and how he's doing it. But at the same time, just the reality of, Lord, am I doing the right? You gotta kind of speak to me, and he did. The Lord really did, which is why I wanted to talk about this. And we've probably taken too long to set up the idea, but the passage of scripture I've taught this passage several times, and this was a dynamic where the Lord kind of brought a different angle to it. So Creighton, in Acts chapter 8, you've got Philip. You know who Philip is, right?
Yes.
So Philip was one of the 7 deacons that had been chosen by the church. So the church in Jerusalem's growing. The needs are eclipsing the ability. Are we good? You good?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We still online? We live?
As far as I can tell, we're still online. I think Justin tripped over that cord.
Okay. Justin tripped over the cord, but we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Just making sure we're good. The on air is still good. It's not blinking. You told me that would be a thing.
Yes.
Okay. So sorry for that. We had a little bit of commotion, and Justin almost just fell his way out of the room. Anyway, the church is growing in Jerusalem. The needs are eclipsing the ability of the apostles to handle them. In fact, to the point that like certain things, important things, are being neglected. Things are falling through the crack. It's not a good dynamic. And so the apostles tell the people, hey, you guys choose out from among yourselves 7 men. They give them some qualifications to be deacons. So they institute this new role called a deacon, a designated doer, to take care of like some of the practical needs of the church, which would allow the apostles to focus on prayer, the teaching of God's word, other things. Of the list of characters, the 2 most notable, Stephen, who ends up becoming the first martyr of the church. That's all Acts chapter 7. The other guy that's noteworthy is a man by the name of Philip. This is not the Philip that was an apostle. There is a Philip and Nathaniel were from Bethsaida. Different Philip entirely. A young man that gets chosen to be a deacon. This is many years after Jesus' ascension. We don't know if Philip had any interactions with Jesus while he was alive on earth. But at some point, whether it was the preaching of Peter at Pentecost or one of the sermons to follow, Philip's heart is gripped. God speaks to him in a powerful way. He gives his life to the Lord, and then he starts growing in ministry capacity. Like good things are happening. Well, as a result of Stephen's martyrdom at the hands of who would become the Apostle Paul, who was Saul of Tarsus at that point, there's a scattering that takes place. So people kind of have to flee Jerusalem because of this persecution. Acts chapter 8, verse 4, we read, therefore, those who were scattered went everywhere preaching the word, which is really interesting because, so Satan tries to attack the church by attacking the leadership. There's this blazing fire. So he's trying to like snuff out this fire. And what happens, the embers spread, like it creates a bigger wildfire. And so this persecution forces the church in Jerusalem to start to fulfill the Great Commission. It had been about, 7 years, give or take. We don't know the exact timeline. It had been some time. Jesus said, hey, go to Jerusalem, wait for the power of the Holy Spirit, then go Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth. Well, they had stayed in Jerusalem. So this persecution that's occurring in Jerusalem is now forcing the church kind of out of its comfort zone. They can't stay there. They can't stay contained. So they're taking the gospel. Literally, people are spreading out. They're scattered everywhere, preaching the word. Verse 5, then Philip, who had we been introduced to as one of the deacons, went down to the city of Samaria and preached Christ to them. And the multitudes, with one accord, heeded the things spoken by Philip, hearing and seeing the miracles which he did. For unclean spirits, crying out with a loud voice, came out of many who were possessed, and many who were paralyzed and lame were healed. And there was great joy in that city. So, this is an amazing scene. You've got Philip going to Samaria. Now, Philip's not the first person to go to Samaria. The Samaritans were kind of like this half grouping, half Jew, half Gentile. They worshipped Jehovah, but they worshipped from a different mountain. In the Gospel of John, I believe it's chapter 4, Jesus will go into Samaria, breaking custom, breaking protocol. He'll go to Jacob's well. He'll minister to a woman there, the woman at the well, and he'll declare that he has the living water. An amazing scene. And Jesus will spend, according to John, 2 days in Samaria, laying the groundwork, like tilling the fields for a future harvest. In fact, the disciples are like, why are you doing this? He says, hey, the harvest is plentiful. The laborers are few. Jesus lays the framework, and then he leaves Samaria. He tries to go back at one point. They reject him. They don't want him to come in. He's kind of a hot potato at that moment. that's where James and John are like, let us rain down fire from heaven. And Jesus is like, seriously? That's not what we're doing, sons of thunder.
Chill out, guys. Chill out.
Chill out, fellas. But Philip goes to Samaria. So Jesus lays the groundwork in Samaria. He tills the soil, he plants the seeds, and it's Philip that goes and reaps this harvest. He's preaching the gospel. That's the first thing we're told. He goes to Samaria and he's preaching the good news. What is he preaching? He's preaching Jesus. He's preaching Jesus crucified, Jesus resurrected, salvation in Jesus and Jesus alone. And then accompanying his teaching ministry are these miraculous signs. And we see this pattern not just in Jesus' ministry, we see it in the apostolic ministry, where in order to validate, to substantiate the power of the word, there were miracles. So, you know, in much the same way that Jesus in Peter's house would look at the lame man and say, your sins are forgiven. And then the skeptical Pharisees would say, well, you're copping out. Like, it's easy to say your sins are forgiven when the most pressing need is he's paralyzed. Like, you know, you're taking the cheap way out here. So Jesus then says, well, so that you know that the Son of Man has the power to forgive sins, in order that you know that my word is powerful to forgive sin and the spiritual realm. Now I'm going to speak, same voice, rise, take up your bed and walk, and the lame man gets up. So the miracles are always accompanying the preaching of God's word to validate, substantiate the power of the word. We see this with Philip, which is interesting because he's not an apostle. He's just a deacon. He's just a doer. He's a table waiter. He's a guy that's pushing a broom around the church and then goes to Samaria and he's preaching the gospel. He's performing these miracles. And an incredible revival happens. Like, all of Samaria is on fire to the point that like what's happening in Samaria is so radical that like word gets back to the apostles that are still in Jerusalem, and they're like, well, we need to check this out, right? And so they send Peter and John, who had been in Samaria with Jesus, and they testify of this incredible work and a revive the whole area. And Philip, the evangelist, is right in the middle of it. Like, he went from being a deacon, now he's a mega church pastor. Like, literally leading a massive revival in this entire town. Amazing. We actually read verse 24, 25 of chapter 8. Simon Peter answered, said, pray to the Lord for me. Oh, no, a different Simon the sorcerer. But verse 25 summarizes, so when they had testified, they preached the word of the Lord, that being Peter and John. They returned to Jerusalem, preaching the gospel in many of the villages of the Samaritans. Now, verse 26, an angel of the Lord spoke to Philip, saying, arise and go towards the south along the road which goes from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is desert. So he arose and went. Now, it's easy to read that and not like keep the context of what's going on. Philip has to leave his home because of persecution. His buddy dies. His buddy gets stoned to death. And there's a warrant out for everyone. Like, it's dangerous to be in Jerusalem. Philip's entire life gets upended. He has to flee his home, flee his community, flee his church, flee his role. And he goes to Samaria, a place where there's been racial tension for generations, a place where it's an unbelieving community, where there's nothing happening. And God uses him in a spectacular way. And now he's pastoring this massive church. He's got the apostles coming from Jerusalem to check out his ministry, to hear him preach, validating what's happening. God's using him in a mighty way to reach an entire people group, right? That's amazing. The confidence, the value, how happy he was. Like, just the humanity of being used by God in such a way. And then you get Peter and John that are there and like, hey, Philip, you do realize like you're reaping the harvest that Jesus himself sowed so many years ago. Like, God is using you mightily. That's awesome. He's got no religious training. He's got no Bible college. He's been mentored, discipled. He's practically served. He has to run because of persecution, and God anoints him. power of the Holy Spirit demonstrated through him massively. As Trump would say, bigly, right?
Very bigly. It was big.
It was big. And then, in the middle of all of that, we don't even know how, but an angel of the Lord spoke to Philip. Was it in a dream? Was he taking a shower? Like, was he in his quiet time taking a walk? Like, where in the world did this happen? But an angel appears to Philip and says, "Arise and go towards the south along the road which goes from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is desert." So he arose and went. Clearly, Philip recognized this was a messenger from God. Clearly, he recognized that he was getting his instructions from Jesus himself. Like, again, from his reaction, there's no doubt. There's no time to contemplate. There's no, let's arrange a prayer meeting to discern God's will. Like, whatever happens is profound enough that Philip's like, immediately, I'm gone. Like, what was the conversation like with the elder board the next morning? Like, hey guys, I know that God's doing a really amazing thing here. We've got thousands of people coming. You know, I know everyone's excited about the sermon series I'm in the middle of, but you know what? I've been told to bounce. Like, God had told me to go someplace. Well, where are you going? Where's the next big mega church? Is there a promotion? Is there a bigger town, a bigger church? All this notoriety? No. Actually, I'm going, there's this road, connects Jerusalem and Gaza. And just so you know, the Holy Spirit affirms, according to Luke, it's desert. You know, yes, I know I'm an evangelist, but you know, I'm going to go to a deserted road where there is no one. Why? Well, because God told me to. And like, I'm just a tool in the hands of the master. And I have no idea why I'm going. Because we're not, like, he's not given a reason why. He says, arise and go. It's towards the south. There's a road. Jerusalem, Gaza, it's desert. So he's obedient. Again, you know, the only way that you can be obedient in that dynamic is that your self-worth and value is not rooted in human metrics of success. Because he's leaving the paycheck, the health care, the house, the fame, the notoriety, the job security,
the success,
the Twitter handle. He's leaving it all behind. The support staff, the worship leader, the lights, the budget. And he's going to desertion. And he's got no idea, no reason why, other than God told him to. I mean, that takes, like, you can only do that if your value is just in God and him alone. Like, the only way you can do that is, like, your self-worth is not based in anything you're doing or have done, but purely in what Jesus has done for you. And he's obedient. Now, he arose and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority under Candace, the queen of the Ethiopians, who had charge of all of her treasury, he had come to Jerusalem to worship, and he was returning. And he was sitting in the chariot, was reading Isaiah the prophet. Then the Spirit said to Philip, go near and overtake this chariot. So Philip ran to him. Pause. I love this story. It's one of my favorite stories. So Peter leaves revival, and he goes to this road, a deserted road. And we don't know how long he's been walking. A day, 2 days. It's deserted. At some point, you're Philip. You're like, okay, this was a really strange instruction, Lord. Felt very useful in Samaria. Felt like you were using my gifts, my ability. I mean, I like to wax poetic. Thought I was, really like expounding on the word. People are really gravitating to my sermons. And now you have me out here with no one. Cool. And then at some point, there's dust in the distance. Now, Jerusalem to Gaza, he's on the way to Gaza. So it's coming from behind him. Because there's this Ethiopian eunuch. He's in charge of Candace, the queen of the Ethiopians' treasury. He's very wealthy. God's been doing this whole thing in his life. Ethiopians, there's some connections to the Jews. There's big Jewish communities. He's come to Jerusalem to worship, but he's been completely ripped off by the experience. Again, he's coming to the same temple that historically, I mean, he can only enter the outer court. He's a Gentile. He's come to encounter God, to worship. He's only encountered what Jesus drove out, money changers, a den of thieves. It hadn't changed. You can imagine that he's leaving Jerusalem very disillusioned, empty, kind of bummed out by the experience. You know, he came to worship God. It was turned away. Couldn't offer sacrifices, couldn't pray, didn't have access, even with his wealth. I'm sure he's disappointed. Now, he's wealthy. He's procured a scroll. He's reading from the prophet Isaiah. Philip doesn't know any of this. He doesn't know who this guy is, doesn't know any of the backstory, doesn't know why he's on the road heading to Gaza, doesn't know where he's come from, what he's done, knows nothing. He sees the chariot, the dust being kicked up. It passes him. Again, because he's going from Jerusalem to Gaza. We know the Ethiopian's leaving Gaza, so he passes him. So the chariot passes him. You know, and I get it's desert, so, you know, you don't get the mud puddle that comes up onto it. It's like a cloud of dust, you know? And so Philip, with this cloud of dust, God speaks to him and says, hey, that chariot. Yeah, I know, that one. It's the only one I've seen. Yeah, go, look at the instruction. The Spirit said to Philip, how did he say? Was it audible, still small voice? The Holy Spirit does. Philip recognized, go near, overtake the chariot. So Philip ran to him. Again, so little is included. The instruction is what? Yeah, Philip, that chariot, yeah, I see it. Go catch it. Okay. And so he runs and he catches it. What does he do then? Nothing. He's just running alongside of the chariot. Like, in fact, the way that the text, Philip ran to him and heard him reading the prophet Isaiah and said, do you understand what you are reading? And he said, how can I unless someone guides me? So he asked Philip to come up and sit with him. Now, if I were to turn to a random place in the Old Testament and I started to read it, how long would it take you to figure out what I'm reading from? Probably a good amount of time. I mean, we could run this experiment, but we don't have time. Like, I could, that's Isaiah. No, it's Jeremiah. Jonah might be recognizable, but you can flip to any like. So Philip, the Spirit says, hey, catch the chariot. Doesn't tell him what to do after that. So you get Philip just, the chariot's going, and he's caught it. He's running. Like, how long is he running beside the chariot? Long enough that he can listen to the guy. Like, you're the Ethiopian, and you're there with your scroll reading from Isaiah. And you look over in a deserted road, and there's a Jew running alongside your chariot. Just staring at you, like, I'm not running beyond you. I just told to catch you, Like, this is the trippiest thing. And yet Philip just being simply obedient. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here. God said catch the chariot. Didn't say what to do when I caught it, so I'm just going to run alongside of it for a while. And then the Ethiopian, you pull up to a light and you think someone's staring at you. It takes you a little while before you finally, look over. He looks over and goes, hey, what you reading? Sounds like it's Isaiah. You know what you're reading? And then I love the fact that the Ethiopian has a conversation with him while they're still moving, Like, yeah, keep going. Keep going. We need to figure out who this guy is first. Hey, do you know what you're reading? It's Isaiah. Like, how can I unless someone teaches me? And Philip's like, well, I don't know. Maybe I can help. Can you stop the chariot for the conversation?
Got any water? Maybe
Got
a little
any
Gatorade?
water? Gatorade? So he stops the chariot. Philip climbs in, explains this passage, says it's about Jesus. The Ethiopian gets saved.
I think I know what passage, too.
Philip baptizes him. Immediately coming out of the water, Philip gets raptured. Boom, he's in Joppa. It's a crazy story. It encourages me. Because does God care about numbers at all? You can't say he doesn't care about numbers because he sent Philip to Samaria knowing that there would be a revival and a harvest, right? So Philip goes and that's glorious. That's awesome. But God takes the same guy. It's like, I'm going to make a point here. I mean, he sends him to a deserted road for one dude.
Yeah, but that one dude, do you know the history of Ethiopia?
Oh, for sure. Oh, no. And you can elaborate.
They have been, like, not only have they been
Why
the
don't,
only...
before you elaborate, you read the card in front of you.
Just want to remind people what we're talking about. Well, I guess we're talking about, like, the impact of church size and what's important and what's not. The gist of it.
Yeah.
But the history of, like, some of the best food you'll ever have if you've never had Ethiopian food.
Oh, I have.
Yeah, it's with my top 3 faves. But, like, the history, Ethiopia's the only country in Africa that's never been colonized. They have one of the oldest churches in the world there. Christianity's been there. I mean, so you guys... Yeah, maybe
and it tracks back to this guy.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is, like, and there's been a number of times in my life I'm like, why am I here?
Yeah.
And it's a constant cycle struggle in my life, Why did I go to this place? Why did I go to this place? Why did I do this? And it always goes back to, well, maybe it's this one moment in time where I was able to talk to this one person for this few minutes, and maybe that person's going to go then and share the gospel with somebody else, and it's going to exponentially increase.
That's all great. That's all great. And that's kind of what's cool about the story, because we have the historical context, we have the background, we know what this Ethiopian, what ends up happening. I'm looking at it, and all that, again, not negating that, because you're right. Absolutely right. And then you can go back and read, like, the biography of Charles Spurgeon, how he got saved, and go back to Billy Graham and how he got saved, and how, like, there's always a person that leads that person, to the Lord. And I think that has a reciprocal effect moving forward. But just looking at it from Philip's perspective, because so I've taught a message. Every time I've taught this passage, it's always like I've titled it micro evangelism. Like, we think of evangelism in, like, a more macro sense, that we're called to reach the masses, but in reality, we're called to reach the one, whatever one God puts in front of us. And so instead of
is what he says in this, it's leave the 99 to save the one,
to go after the one.
Yep.
And so, and Philip's a great example of, that God found it just as important, that the Ethiopian come to know the Lord than the entire group of Samaritans, and God cares about the one. And and every time I've taught it, the application, the emphasis for the congregation has been like, hey, who's the one for you? Like, don't get bogged down about the masses that need to be reached. Focus on the one, because God cares about the one.
But I don't think that really matters a whole lot in my perspective. I think what matters is obedience to God.
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, like, if God had called me to run beside the chariot, I would just probably laugh. Like,
you would have tried to tackle the horse.
Right. I ain't running.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No,
maybe a fast walk.
Well, but even then, like, the application, like, Philip was obedient to the Lord. The Lord led him to the Samaritans, but the Lord led him to the one. And, like, be led by the Lord, be obedient to the Lord. But, like always remember, evangelism, like, from God's perspective, he's as excited about saying 1,000 as he is one. I mean, it's and just the application. Look for your one, whoever the one is. And in my life, that happens a lot. Like, I'm just looking for that one project, that one person, that I can just be a friend to and run alongside of. And in the process of running alongside of that one person, there's a guy, and I'm not going to name him, but, like, our paths have been pretty intertwined for about 3 years now. And
this is not the baseball dad with the weird beard that you kind of.
No, that's a whole different thing, and I'm not even going to name who this is. But no, there's a guy that I've been running alongside of loosely, and just for whatever reason, feel like the Lord has put him along my path, and I don't know why. And Saturday night, in the middle of my depression about everything, thinking, what am I doing? I started inviting some people, and the Lord put him on my mind, and he was like, we weren't going to be going anywhere, but yeah, we'll be there on Sunday. First time he came to church. Just cool. Like, just the one. So I've always taught it that way. But for me, what became how the Lord used this to minister to me is that God really doesn't care. I looked at it from the perspective of Philip.
Can I add another wrinkle?
Like Philip it didn't matter. Like God, whether it was a church of 1,000 or a whole town or it was an audience of one, Philip didn't care. Like he was cool with like whatever God was calling him to do. So like, hey, if you're pastoring a big church, great, cool. But like, I'm not, and that's also cool. And that's also great. Like, that isn't like, what's the expectation? The expectation is to be faithful to what God's given you and where He's called you, and that moment, that space, that time. See what I'm saying?
I do. Creighton, go ahead, and then I do have something to say as
jump
well.
in.
Okay, so I would just like to point out that we talk a lot, like semi-often, about the pitfalls that megachurch pastors fall into. And I think that is pretty obviously, Satan attacking people who are doing good things for God.
Yeah.
Or people falling to, that same idea.
No one ever starts ministry thinking, "Hey, I'm gonna have an affair and ruin my life."
I think that it is equally likely that if Satan uses an inflated pride to attack megachurch pastors, he uses discouragement to attack small church pastors.
Well, I think
Because
that's
that
what
would
you
make sense.
I think
Yeah,
that's what
no.
you see in the story of Philip. You don't see in the passage. You don't see Philip saying, "Look what," at all. Like, look at this revival I started over here.
He never goes back to Samaria, by the way.
Right. He's just like, it's not that he doesn't care, but at the same time, it's like, was it Paul says, "I must decrease, he must increase." I mean, that's this.
You know what Philip's lasting legacy is? He said find him in Joppa. And then the next time you see him is at the end of the Apostle Paul's journeys. He's on his way back to Jerusalem, and there's Philip again, and he's got 5 prophetess daughters.
That's right.
That are like Christian rock stars making an impact.
It's because Jaffa's an awesome place. Nice little shawarma spot there.
Of course,
You and food.
but
I
like
love food.
like his legacy becomes his family, his kids, which I also think is fascinating. To your point, Creighton, then we'll get to you, football mom, is the they say, again, you read the biography of Charles Spurgeon. And Charles Spurgeon, the Tabernacle, there in London, I mean, thousands of people he's pastoring, he's speaking to. He dealt with absolutely debilitating depression. Like, his assistant would have to force him on stage to go preach because he didn't think he was any good at it.
Are we talking about Joel Osteen?
No one has to push him on stage. He gets lowered down from the rafters. But like,
Naturally.
I think probably you're right. Inflated ego. Because, megachurch, like once you start thinking you're special.
Right, you're lost.
You're in trouble. Or that you're not replaceable, you're in trouble. Or that it's your thing that you're doing, you're in trouble. Inflated ego, pride, that is absolutely a tool of Satan. And on the flip side, depression, am I good enough? Why is this not working? Why don't I see these results? Again, a lies from hell. Jeremiah ministered for 40 years, had 0 converts. Was he a success or failure? He's Jeremiah.
Right.
And then Philip illustrates whether it's a whole town, whether it's one, or whether it's just raising godly kids. Like God, again, it's well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into your rest that you want to hear. It has nothing about accomplishment. Like the way that we value accomplishment, the way that we quantify it, we measure it, we determine it. Again, and if you've listened to Outlaw Radio, been around Calvary, like I reject all of that. Like I'm not caught into that gang. Don't want to be. But then the humanity hits you, and it hits you. And that's where I just came back to this story. The Lord kind of flipped it on me and was like, Philip was totally content, man. Mm-hmm. Like, it was like, just get out of your headspace. Like, you're doing what I've called you to do, and that's enough. That's enough. And it's like, yeah, okay, Lord, you're right. That's enough. And again, yeah. Glory to you. Isaac, jump in.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. I think the difficult part about today, and I just kind of think back to when there was that 400-year period of time where people felt like God wasn't there.
Yeah.
I don't know, was that during the Maccabees or after the Maccabees?
It was during the Maccabees, but it's between the close of the Old Testament, Malachi, and then really the angelic declaration to Zacharias about the birth of John. And that was the first, about 400 years of what we call silence.
Gotcha.
Maccabees fits within that historically.
So, do you think God was speaking to people during that period of silence, or, you know, was he speaking to people and it just wasn't documented, or what's
So
the reason why I ask?
yeah, tie that to the topic.
Let me tell you, yes. So, and we're talking about, I think God's, well, what I'm thinking about is God's, influence in our lives. And if you're, what are you, so obviously I see the parallel between Philip and you. So you're essentially saying that, at a certain point in time, you left the comfort of your dad's church. You had a good situation going there. And then you ended up going to Calvary 316 to lead this church, where it was kind of like the cross in the road. You felt like probably God was calling you to this place. Am I right about that? Yep. Okay.
I'm listening. I'm sorry.
So, essentially, you obviously felt like God was calling you here. And I feel like sometimes probably people feel this maybe more often than not. Maybe I'm wrong, but how do you...
I know it's hard to keep a train of thought when other things are going on in the room. You get my own challenge when Spice Daddy
Right.
gets up to use the bathroom and trips over half the cords.
I feel like I'm watching two mimes.
My flip flop got caught. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're aware that your foot got caught. Sorry, Isaac. Just take two. Creighton, you need to read the card at some point.
Oh my
Read
God.
the flipping cord.
Some people are better at figuring out the calling of God in their life than others. So
Yeah,
Oh my
Creighton's terrible at
goodness.
charades. Apparently,
I can't read
Clearly.
lips.
we weren't reading lips. It was like literally like,
pointing at
this,
my
hey, read the
phone.
card. Creighton, read the card real quick.
If
have
you'd
a
like to
card.
reach out to us,
Yes, thank you.
it is for Zach's personal phone number. If you want to send him feet pics,
If you'd
it's
like
at
to join the conversation.
678. It's at 438-9202. You can also email us at popecreighton@gmail.com if you have questions, comments, or concerns, especially future episode topics. That again is Pope Creighton. Creighton is spelled CreighTon @gmail.com. And Zach's phone number is 678-438-9202.
We're getting close to the end of the show.
My goodness.
Any comments if you'd like to get involved? That's why we had these cards. So Isaac,
I do have a bunch of comments, by the way. We haven't had a chance yet.
we'll get to those in a second. I think I got what you're saying.
Let me just glaze over that.
Okay, try it again.
You obviously felt like God spoke to you.
About Calvary 316
And told you to
doing
come-
this. Yes.
And I know that you have told me that you could go to a bigger church with more people on the beach, make more money.
I'd like to think so, but who knows?
I'm sure that you could. I
Who
really
knows?
do think that. But I know that you've also told me that you're never going to leave.
Yes.
And how do you know that maybe it's, how do you differentiate between
I don't
that
want to say
internal-
never. I
Okay.
want to back off of maybe the never.
Right. But
Because
how
I
do
did
you-
leave for 5.5 months. I moved in town.
That's true.
Yeah.
yeah, but
that
still
was
God
not-
made you do that.
Right. That was
That's
not
true.
of your own fruition. So how do you differentiate that internal voice, like your internal desire?
Yeah.
And the obviously God telling you what you need to do, because obviously you have a desire not to leave. You want to be here. How do you do that?
So there was a Bible study I heard years ago. I was in Bible college, actually. It was a very exciting time around Calvary Chapel. kind of one of the legends, one of kind of the great heroes. You had Pastor Chuck, Calvary Costa Mesa, but one of the guys you just idolized. I say that not in a negative connotation, but you just really looked up to. It's a guy by the name of John Corson. John Corson had started Applegate Christian Fellowship up in Oregon, and it became a mega church. And John was just a dynamic preacher, very charismatic, just my Mount Rushmore. John came down to was invited by Pastor Chuck to leave Oregon, and there was a lot of rumblings that he was going to be like the guy that was going to take over. That never didn't happen. That's a whole another topic for another time. But like, I'll never forget like the first message I heard John teach when he came down. I don't know what the title of it was, but the gist of it, because he had just made this like major decision, like this major life decision. He had left Southern California, had gone to Oregon, to the middle of nowhere in Oregon, Applegate, to start a church with a couple families, and the plan was that was going to be it. Like there was no community around, there's no one around them, and it was going to be like this simple, subtle expression of faith. He didn't want to be anything big, didn't want to be known, just wanted to be faithful to this little group of people. Well, they had people driving like hours from all over Oregon. It literally blew up, was huge. It was not what he pursued, not what he wanted, not what he expected. But then it was like he was going to be there forever. This was his thing. And then Pastor Chuck called, was like, I want you to come down and help me here at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. And Pastor Chuck was probably the only person on the planet that could have gotten John to leave. Now, John handed the church over to his son, Peter John Corson, who has, over the last few years, passed away. But he left the church to his son. He moved down to Costa Mesa. And he taught this Bible. So his first study was like discerning God's will. And I'll never forget it because it was like, and you can get into like, it might have been a little bit, a little naive in the way that he presented it. Maybe not even hermeneutically like, I don't know. I don't want to get into the theology of it, but it hit me. It was profound to me. So he's talking about the children of Israel being led from Egypt to the land of promise, which is like this allegory also, literal history, but an allegory of our life from the world to the promised land, and that we're in this journey. And he's like, well, how did God lead? How did they know God's will? Because ultimately God's will is like, where do I go? What do I do? What's the next step? We're on a journey. It's a path. How do I know to go right, to go left? Like, how do I discern God's will in regards to the concept of moving forward? Right? You with me? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, we get this idea that, so we're told that God led the children of Israel by a pillar of, a cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. And we get in our mind that there was a cloud up ahead, and where the cloud moved, they followed. And there was at night pillar of fire, and they followed the fire. He correlated that to this passage in Psalms, which gives the indication that it wasn't so much that as much as it was they were under the cloud by day, and they were under the fire by night, which actually makes sense because they're in the desert. You're going from Egypt to the land of promise. It's just desert. It's very hot during the day, and it's very cold at night. And so how did God lead his people? How did they abide in his will? Well, during the day, they stayed in the shade. And like when the shade moved, they were like, yeah, we're going to go with the shade. And then at night, like if the fire moved, they're like, it's cold out here. Let's stay in the warmth. So John, I think the title of the message was like staying in the cool place. Like that God's will is not like that really hard. It's like sometimes it's just about abiding the cool place, that we don't have to overthink it. He talked about how the priests, that God specifically had the priests wear linen because they were doing his work, and it was breathable fabric. It was light. It was airy. He didn't want them sweating. He didn't want them toiling. You know, he didn't want it to be a burden. And so John's like, you know, people say, well, you know, why did you leave Oregon to go to Calvary Costa Mesa? He says, you know, I thought about it, and I thought, you know, that seems just kind of like the cool thing to do. Like that the cloud moved. Now, what's crazy is the cloud moved again because that was a disaster in Costa Mesa. It was a total disaster. And then the cloud, I think, led him down to an orphanage in Mexico, him and his wife, until they ultimately circled all the way back around because his son got sick and he ended up back at Applegate. Was that all God's will? I don't know. I mean, that's for John and Jesus to figure out. But like for me, Calvary 316 at the time and the space and everything going on in my life, it really felt like it wasn't hard. It wasn't a hard decision to make. Like I remember going into Pastor James's office and just kind of like, James, what do I do? He goes, you should have done this 3 years ago. And I was like, you're right. I'm the world's worst assistant pastor. I should move on. It is time. Like it wasn't hard. Like if you're ever in a situation where you have like A and B and you really it's eating you up and you don't feel like you know what you need to do and you don't have a peace and you're stressed about it, you need to step back and say, you know, this is not how God leads people. Because we're promised a peace that would surpass understanding. That doesn't mean we don't make hard decisions, but we'll have a peace. That's how we know. Philip, every step tying it all back together. Every step along the way, it was the Spirit leading him, right? Go to Samaria, okay. Go to this road, okay. Go catch the chariot, cool. Like every step, he was sensitive to the Holy Spirit. It wasn't, again, he wasn't racking his brain, wasn't playing Bible roulette, wasn't having his friends gather for a prayer meeting. It was like, no, God said go. And he went. And then when God said don't, because he gets to Joppa, he stays there the rest of his life. You know? It's not like he was always moving around. It was like just this old wild bird. But it wasn't that hard. He just trusted the Lord and just wanted to abide in the shade. In the cool place.
I can tell you right now, I guarantee the most scary decision he made was to stay in Joppa.
Probably, but we don't, I mean...
Well, I mean, just, you know, going off...
He gets there, he gets married, he has kids, he has a family, we don't even know what he does.
Right.
But he was content, and his kids loved Jesus, so he evangelized his own spawn, you know? I mean, it was...
Does it say that, you know, God told him to go to Joppa?
No, God took him there.
They didn't give him a choice.
So I'm wondering, I mean, maybe he stayed there just out of his own, you know, because it doesn't say, you know, then God called him.
Well, we don't know where he ends up ultimately either. Again,
Yeah.
that's where, and you go back to an earlier statement of like, during the 400 years of silence, was God not speaking to anyone? Well, we can't say that.
Right.
The Bible doesn't record every act of God in humanity. It's just the ones that are related to a particular story that needs to be told. Again, John would say to close his gospel, hey, if we recorded everything Jesus did, there's not enough volumes to record it all in. Like, but what is included for us is by inspiration of the Holy Spirit for a particular reason. So just because there was 400 years, yeah, big revelation, big movement. No, there was none. But like, there are still people going and making sacrifices. And people living 400 years, like living simple lives of obedience to God, that I'm sure God moved and spoke, but not in like a big sense. That makes...
Well, I mean, I think you see that with just the story of Jesus in itself, like his parents. I mean, they didn't come from non-believing homes. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Mary and Joseph are both very godly and follow the Lord and feared the Lord. And you don't just get that from God not moving in your life. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. You know, and with that, I've never thought about this. They were betrothed before God interacted with either of them.
Right.
Like they had already felt the Lord's leading to this other person, whether it was arranged or not, but they're betrothed.
But I guarantee that came from their parents and their parents before them.
And God God was using it all.
Right.
And was orchestrating. And that's where we use the word providence, the providence of God. There's an old saying, man, I'm trying to think of who said it.
Probably Joel Osteen.
Probably him or Benny Hinn, for sure. But it was love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and then do whatever you want to after that.
That was me.
It was not you. But the idea is, like, if you truly love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, like if that's your heart and your passion, I want to be on God's will, and I want to do what God wants me to do, and I want to be in the center of His will. If that's your genuine desire, like, He's not going to abandon you, and He's not going to lead you astray.
Yeah.
Like, if you set your heart, your mind, your soul on the kingdom of God, then do whatever.
Right.
And He's going to orchestrate that.
It's not like he's going to tell you not to tell somebody about Jesus.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
No, don't go tell that guy.
Creighton, get some of the comments on. Let's get
Yes.
some of the audience.
So
in
on
here.
Facebook, we got Mr. D said that he has a nickname for you, and I'm a big fan of it.
Okay.
It is PZ the Survivor.
PZ the Survivor.
PZ
Sounds like
the
a rap
Survivor.
name.
I like it. We also have a hello from Hillary.
Hi,
We
Hillary.
Hi, Hillary.
We have a hello from Lizette, who says that she normally doesn't get to watch us live because of her church service, but she got to catch us tonight, so that's very nice.
Oh, wonderful.
Nice to see you. And then we have from my mom talking about the mega churches. So they're a mile wide and an inch deep. C316 is small but well fed.
Hi, Creighton's mom.
Yes, hi mom. Tom said the Matthew 18:20, for where two or three are gathered together in my name, I am there in the midst of them. And then Kenny said, quantity comes in when you look at who your congregation is coming in contact with between Sundays. I imagine the intentional relationships cultivated in a smaller congregation tend to extend further than that of a larger church, which I think is probably true.
Yeah, interesting.
So yeah, those are our comments. It is almost 9:30.
Yeah, well, I will close with this. Kenny did text me. He said, Leaf by Oscar Maduro. I'll have a couple more waiting for Creighton and Spice Daddy when they come to Honduras.
Let's
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
And that'll be in June, which will be wonderful. So, final thoughts, you guys. We'll tap out.
Good to go.
Guys, good? All right. Well, I do get to hit music leading out. I know we have a fancy intro, but
Yes.
you have been watching the Outlaw Radio Show. If you're watching, check out the podcast released on Thursdays, Apple, Google, Spotify. If you're listening, check out the live stream Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. next week. Programming note, April 10th, we've got Dee, Miss Ann, will be joining us in studio to share their testimony. Very excited about that. Everything gets archived on YouTube. The podcast, you can learn all about the show by just going to outlawradio.org, outlawradio.org. God bless.